Hello, and thank you for joining us for this discussion about Homeroom, which is playing as part of the 2021 Independent Film Festival Boston. My name is Brian Tam. I'm the executive director here at the festival, and I'm very glad to have you all here. We have some very special guests, so I want to bring them up now. First, I want to introduce you to Pete Nix and Sean Havey, who are director and producer, respectively.
Hello. Hey, Brian.
And then we've got two subjects of the film, Denilson and Jessica, who you no doubt know a little bit by now. And to moderate this Q&A, I want to bring up from Vanyaland, Michael Christopher. Hello, Michael.
Hey, guys.
We're really looking forward to this conversation. So, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brian. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I know the word powerful gets thrown around a lot when it comes to documentaries, and especially ones that focus on social justice and social change. But when it comes to the youth, when it involves the youth as the main subjects, the literal future of our country, it's really hard to deny that Homeroom is truly it's a dynamic and compelling piece of film. So thank you all for being the subjects, and for, of course, Pete and Sean for putting this together. It's quite an amazing piece of cinema.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, I want to start with Sean. This is the second film you worked on in Peter's Oakland trilogy. The first, of course, being 2017's The Force, which was about the reforms that the Oakland Police Department had been trying to make. This was going to be a different type of film, but it was hit with challenges right away. Of course, there was the tragic passing of Peter's daughter, and then things went completely in the left field when COVID hit. Obviously, none of that was what you were planning on when you went into it, but what were your expectations going in, and how did you make the adjustments to such an unprecedented situation?
Yeah, sure. So the way we approach filmmaking, we are very nimble. We're a small team. And so the way we walk into any situation is really as reporters first, and feel out the spaces, the people, and let them sort of guide us into what the story wants to be. And so that's how we approach The Force. Obviously, crazy events took place there, and we pivoted to cover those. And so when the tragedy struck, Pete's family and the whole film crew, we made adjustments. And then when COVID hit, we again adjusted to sort of follow the story and not dictate what we wanted to present to the audience, but let the film, be what it wanted to be.
Pete, was there ever a point where you thought, okay, this is too much. We need to hit pause until things calm down, or completely shut everything down, and we'll just try it again next year with another class and see what happens then?
No question. And normally, I shoot my own films, and that's kind of part of my style. And I was planning on shooting this one, but even before we lost my daughter, she had been struggling for many years. It didn't just sort of come out of left field. We were sort of wrestling with the adolescent mental health system, and that actually inspired or informed me to some degree to want to sort of actually make the film that year, because I felt that she was not alone, a young girl of color, coming of age in this time today, very complex time, that surely the struggles that she was facing were being faced by many other young people. And so that was sort of what drove me to want to make the film now. And then when we lost her, the initial, for me, after the initial shock of that wore off, I felt that I had to make the film. And I felt that she was sort of pushing us all forward. And I wanted to honor, her story and her experience through the lives of the young people that we met at Oakland High, many of whom, knew her and were tangentially or directly, related to her, because this was the year that she was supposed to graduate. So all that kind of combined to really push us forward and kind of inform the film moving on.
The film itself has a really intimate feel to it. Jessica, Denilson, I want to ask you, what was it like having a camera kind of around all the time? And at a certain point, do you just forget it's there?
Obviously, it was a little bit of uncomfortable in the beginning having a big camera follow us around because, oftentimes as Oakland students, we don't have the opportunity of being recorded or being followed around with the big camera. But in the end, we continued doing what we were always doing, organizing, and just continued the work with All City Council Student Union, all these other local organizations that we were doing many other movements. Like we're doing Measure QQ that allows 16 to 17-year-olds the right to vote for school board members. And then we were also doing the George Floyd resolution to cut ties with school police. So, as we were doing that, we didn't really mind the camera. We were just doing what we love to do, like organize and make the change.
Jessica, what was it like for you with having a camera around?
I think Denilson said it all, but definitely it would have to be. It was pretty weird at first, but then especially again when it comes to Oakland students being followed, there's always this misinterpretation that it's just like, oh, it's another fight or it's another documentary about how students are being put into jail. Like I've seen so many documentaries just based on students who it doesn't show the bright side of Oakland students, and that's just really thanks to Nick has put one of the most amazing films that I've seen definitely out there to show what is the bright side of Oakland students and the Oakland youth.
Sean, your way of shooting is kind of it's an intimate style, I think, by nature. As the pandemic hit and you had, well, this is, I guess, for you as well, Pete, when you had to kind of adjust to, you can't shoot, you can't be in a proximity, you can't be as intimate. How do you make that adjustment?
I mean, we like to set parameters. I mean, yeah, that is not our preferred way of filming, because of just social distancing protocols. Generally throughout the entire film, I'm almost 70% of the time on one focal length, a 50 millimeter prime lens. And so me and Denilson or me and Jessica, we would be, I don't know, sometimes you'd be like, chill, take a step back. But within 5 feet for sure. And so once COVID hit, got on a longer lens generally. But by that point, we had already had a good established.
We had to stop.
Yeah,
First of all, it was just like a complete stop.
Right.
Yeah.
And we couldn't follow some of the characters. We hadn't fully developed all the characters.
Right.
We were still trying to figure out who are the main characters.
Yeah.
The full narrative of the film wasn't fleshed out because it was what March.
Yeah.
Mid-March, and we felt we had another 3 months maybe.
Well, no, initially we thought. I mean, everybody, the entire country was like, oh, 2 weeks, 3 weeks lockdown, right?
Oh yeah, we thought we were coming back.
And so the way we approached that first part was like, oh my God, the world only is going to have stopped for 2 to 3 weeks, so we have to capture COVID, and it's characterize it in some way, which was empty streets and empty subways and whatnot. So for those few weeks, I was out all the time capturing the sort of stillness of life in Oakland. And then eventually, as a country, we all kind of slowly realized this ain't going anywhere, right? And then started to pivot towards covering the George Floyd resolution, re-engaging with our characters when we could in a safe way, right? Outside, for the most part. And then, a lot of protests and stuff sort of guiding the story.
And that's also where we sort of, taking a step back from it, recognized most clearly for the first time that, Denilson and the ACC, they had been working on this issue since day one. And we went back and actually looked at some of our original footage and realized that there was an arc there, and then also recognized that they were still working on that issue through Zoom calls, and that they were still holding the city council meetings and they're remote. And so that's when the narrative began to shift. And then, of course, as the incidents happened, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all those things started happening. It became clear to us kind of where the film, was headed.
Early on in the film, Denilson, you talk about having the feeling of not being heard by adults, which is completely unfair because whatever decisions are being made, it's the students who are directly affected. how did you channel that frustration into action? And how do you make it so your voice is one of the ones that's listened to and not you're just yelling into the void?
It was definitely a very big challenge to overcome, especially, you know, when being in spaces by adults, they often tend to ignore the youth that are in the space. So it was a lot of team effort. You know, I had the privilege to work with Old City Council Student Union and everyone that was able to mentor me and be there for me. You know, working with Jessica, working with Dwayne, and all these other youth leaders in the community, they sort of pushed the agenda to continue to add pressure onto these adults and listen to us. So it was a lot. It was a lot. We did get frustrated most of the time, but at the end, you know, we had these restorative justice circles where we were able to debrief and see what we could do better the next time we meet with these adults. But yeah, it was a lot. But at the end, you know, we were able to do what we do best and organize and add the pressure and do it.
Jessica, how important was it to get other students, especially those who might not be inclined to take part or have the initiative? How important was it to get them involved to make your voice even more vocal?
I think at the end of the day, especially when it comes to education, as being one of the main things that we all fight for, is how it impacts them and how it impacts their futures and their, um, their inspiration. So like that's one of the things it was very important to be able to get other people's voices involved. And it was very hard. I know it can be hard, especially when it comes with Oakwood students who like work 3 jobs, who do a lot of things, especially when it comes to family responsibilities. But those voices are the ones who are supposed to be getting much more heard. And it goes to the thing that like, how is this going to impact our future at the end?
Denilson, is one of the leaders of student government. A big part of your platform and goal, if not the biggest part, was to disband the police force within the school, both because of the view that they unfairly target Black and brown students, and not only that, they keep asking for an increase in budget. When that motion wasn't adopted, you obviously, you said how sad it was. You just said this is sad. How frustrating was it for you, and how demoralizing was it when that happened?
It was honestly very frustrating because we all put in a lot of work to pass that motion. And we had private meetings with the board members beforehand. We were like, you know, this is what the youth want. This is what the youth need to be protected and feel safe in a school that's supposed to be a safe environment. So it was a lot going on through my head. You know, I was thinking back at all the undocumented youth that were in our district, all the Black and brown students that safety was put at jeopardy by this decision. And just looking back at the board members that are here to represent us, but you know, do these decisions that put our safety and our education at risk and just take it for granted. You know, so it was very emotional for me. As y'all saw on one of the scenes, I damn near cried as I was telling them, like, what's wrong with y'all? Like, we're here. Y'all put us at the table to let us know what we need, but y'all are not listening to us. So it was a lot, you know, but in the end, we didn't. What mattered was that we wasn't going to let that stop us. We wanted to continue to actually pass the George Floyd resolution and continue the organizing. So yeah, it was just a little barrier we had to overcome, but at the end, you know, we accomplished our goal.
And as a budding politician, what did that teach you about not being able to always sway opinions at first, but to keep sticking with it if it's part of your goal and part of what your platform is at the end of the day?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, what did it teach you about not being able to get everybody's opinion to be on your side or to sway their opinions at first, but to still go back and continue to try and get it done and make your voice heard and make your opinion be the one that becomes the fact?
I feel like it taught us that it's most definitely a hard thing to do to get out there and do things like the resolution wanted to do, like cut the ties with the Oakland School Police. But at the end, I feel like it taught us to just keep on pushing, adding the pressure to these adults, especially because, you know, throughout the events that followed, you know, with George Floyd, with the murder of George Floyd, it sort of it shed light on the issues that we were advocating on, that we were saying, you know, this is what's happening to Oakland youth. So, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So we just kept pushing and never gave up.
I want to talk about the pandemic a little bit. And Pete, how did you, or did you have any sense to say, well, maybe this is going to be the story? Because I think that we're going to see in the future, we're going to have a lot of stories about COVID. We're going to have a lot of pandemic documentaries. And how did you say, you know what, let's just make it part of the story, but not the story? Because I think that what we have with this youth movement is such a more powerful thing, almost more powerful than the pandemic, and how they overcame it.
It's no question that was the primary decision that we had to make. And I think we all agreed, like, immediately, that this is not going to be about COVID. COVID happened. What was remarkable is that COVID led to, and I think, you know, the way that the community came out to stand up after the incidents, this string of incidents happened, you know, with George Floyd in particular, showed what really sort of, you know, the notion was like, there's a worse virus out there, you know, that we have to address. This virus of racism, this virus of how we see each other, and that notion, to us, it was very clear that was what the story was about. And, you know, to your point, like, we knew that there's going to be a lot of films about COVID, and so we were just trying to figure out how do we make sure that this film doesn't become about COVID, and really staying focused on, you know, Denilson and Jessica and Dwayne and Mike and all these other young people who are working on, like, the fact that they were still so focused on that goal kept us focused on what the story needed to be.
Right. Jessica, how did it evolve for you from, okay, this isn't a big deal, to now all of a sudden you're stuck inside, you have to totally change basically how you're being educated?
At first, I just didn't like it. The internet access was horrible, especially in Oakland. When it came to education, I was falling behind on my work because I couldn't really turn in a lot of things. And also, you know, the unmotivation by seeing how many cases, you know, are taking people's families away. When it comes to, you know, the deaths of COVID, and definitely it was just a big thing about how education was being transmitted, because I know a lot of teachers didn't have access to the computer even, or how most of our students in Oakland didn't have any access to computers or even internet. And definitely it was just that part that was just like, I was like, this is just a big oof. And one of the things was, like, you know, we started the Oakland Divided. That's another initiative that I took on, and being able to supply students over 36,000 laptops and hotspots were given to students throughout Oakland. So not only did, like, the pandemic, again, I know Denilson said about George Floyd's death, being able to raise awareness of these issues. Also, this pandemic also opened a lot of eyes about even racism, but even about the digital divide and how that affects a lot of people's lives to a daily basis.
Denilson, when you saw the death of George Floyd, how did you draw parallels to that, and to how the police force was being used, and to what was happening with your own battles with the in-school police force?
I feel like the murder of George Floyd sort of showed that all of that has become normalized in the racist system that's embedded in our nation. In our community, you know, we often see that happen, like, especially like outside of Oakland. I remember seeing a Black innocent man just being choked, putting on a chokehold as I'm getting out of school, like literally close to school, you know? So it's like, it was these type of incidents that happened close to our neighborhoods, close to our communities, that we knew were affecting our youth and our community members. And we didn't want that system. We didn't want that oppressive system that marginalized our communities of color close to our youth. So I feel like the intersectionality was always there, and we wanted to stop it. And that's what we did. That's what we had, the Black Organizing Project that was working with the similar resolution like the George Floyd for years, for more than a decade actually. We had all these organizations that wanted to cut ties with the school police, but you know, the murder of George Floyd showed how important that was.
Mm-hmm. And did you feel justified when people started coming around to what you were fighting so hard for all along? Or was there a bit of a continued sense of frustration where it's like, see, this is what I've been trying to tell you. If you people would have listened to me at first, you people meaning the adults, if you would listen to me at first, we could have avoided a lot of this in the first place.
I feel like it was a little bit of both. It was a little bit of both because it was like, we could have been done this. We could have been provided all those millions of dollars that y'all are spending on Oakland School Police into important programs in Oakland students' education, like restorative justice, counseling, all of that. So it was frustrated, but at the end, it was sort of relieving that we came to that end, and we were able to eliminate ties with school police. And you know, in the scene where it was like, it shouldn't have like took this long to pass the George Floyd resolution. I was like, this is what the student director's vote always reflects. It always reflects the voting of the community. So it was a very beautiful scene, you know, and that's exactly what we wanted to represent. The student directors are always representing what the community wants. And we hope that these upcoming board members that we have now, that Jessica is working with, continue to see that, you know?
You know, that was such a chill-inducing moment when the motion is finally passed to eliminate school police, and when that motion is adopted, like you get chills like coming up off your head, you know. Pete and Sean, when you were putting all this together, was it as chill-inducing for you as it is for the viewers that are seeing this movie?
Yes, I mean, very, very much so. I mean, the whole last section of the film, I mean, you know, Pete and I have watched this film, I don't know, 30 times now, 40 times. And that last 10 minutes always gets me still. So yes, from the beginning to 30 views later, it still is impactful.
Yeah, it's like one of those special things. And, you know, there are little sort of echoes in the film of characters who were sort of playing more prominent roles in an earlier cut, like Edgar, the young man who now a young man who is struggling to memorize his poem at the beginning of the year. He was originally one of our main characters, and sort of the first time I saw Christina Matwani was our main editor, and then Rebecca Adorno came on later. But the first time I saw her cut that scene of Edgar delivering the poem without hesitation on the back porch of his home, you know, not being able to graduate with his class, it was very emotional for me. Yeah. So it's like, you know, so it's just one of those kind of serendipitous things that you fall into as a storyteller that you can never have predicted. And that is really the spirit of, you know, it's why I think I love documentary, and it's why documentary is so powerful. So that you can't script it. It's just sort of, it's just what is, you know. And so that remains, yeah, that moment for me, that last 10 minutes of the movie it's something else.
Yeah, it truly is. It truly is such an amazing section of film. And speaking of film, Jessica, what was it like seeing yourself on screen? Were you cringing? Were you like, all right, you know, this is me? What was it like for you?
It was actually very emotional. Definitely. Well, like my parts were like, there's a funny part when you like just like showing Denilson and Micah, like, you know, it looked like the little what's his name? I know it's not oh my god, I forgot his name.
Yoda,
Baby Yoda. And so I didn't think that was gonna make the film. Actually, I thought they were gonna cut that out. And it was during the whole like Trump, he was getting how
Impeached.
recalled. Yeah,
Yeah.
impeached.
We love
And
that. We love that, Jessica, though, because you guys are so powerful, and you're young leaders, and you're doing all these things, serious things, meeting with the mayor, but they're still kids.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why we love that scene.
And how it bounces too. It's like it's such a sort of ADD moment too, because you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about getting your initiatives sort of in front of the mayor, and then talking about Baby Yoda all in one breath. You know.
No, I just like how there's like an awkward pause and then it just goes to like something else. But yeah, that's like the first scene that I kind of like come in, and then like at the end it's like very emotional because it's like during the protest, and it was like one of the biggest protests that we've ever done in Oakland, and also how just being able to speak on the issues that I myself am very passionate about. So I mean, yeah, it was a little cringy just seeing myself looking at like, you know, like, oh, like that's how I look in camera. But definitely I got used to it, and it was just an emotional scene because I never thought, like, as a little girl, I've always wanted to, you know, be part of a movie or, you know, just those small things, but never thought I would. And it was just amazing to see that in the screen.
Denilson, same for you. What was it like seeing yourself in a film?
It was very, very like overwhelming, I would say. I think just watching me from my TV was very ironic for me to experience because I just never saw myself being on TV. I don't know, but it was emotional too. You know, most of the scenes that were shown sort of showed me like very at a vulnerable spot, and I'm proud of that. You know, I'm proud that I showed that because at the end it shows the resilience that Oakland youth carry, and you know, the determination that we have to make the change in our communities. Another scene that really like that I was shocked to see was the party scene. You know, Oakland team just partying. I was like, oh my God. But you know, in the end, I was like, you know what, this is good because we don't have the time sometimes to just be kids, and that's exactly what the scene showed. You know, just Oakland students being Oakland's, being hyphy, staying hyphy. And yeah, I really love the way that the scene portrayed not just me, but just the Oakland students in general, and shed light on the issues that we as students experience in our communities. And we just hope that this film just inspires more people to see that, you know, young people are leaders and we want a better world.
And Pete, Sean, how did you guys try to, I know that you keep certain scenes in where you want to show that they're still kids at the heart of this. These are kids, but you also want to be able to show that they want to be advocates for change. They want to make something happen. They want to make their voice heard. How do you find that balance as a filmmaker to be able to show both sides of a kid?
It wasn't hard just because and that's the thing. Like youth in cities like Oakland tend to be kind of like flattened into two-dimensional kind of stereotypes, and you know, goal with all of our work is to you know, show communities and individuals in their full dimensionality as human beings. And at Oakland, we recognized it immediately when we started trying to figure out who's going to be in the film, that there's so many different types of kids there, from the leaders to the dropouts, to the kids who were, you know, smoking weed every day, to the athletes, to the arty kids. I mean, you just have this, and we typically only see that breadth of diversity in these movies about like white suburban kids. You know, think about all the movies I grew up on, Breakfast Club, and you know, all the John Hughes movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, etc. And we knew that was the opportunity here, and we talked to all the kids about everything. And there's a kid in the movie who, you know, he smokes a lot of weed, and we say, hey, so if we show you smoking weed, and he's like, oh man, yeah, you know, it's all good, you know, and so, and then, but that, it's not just that, but that's an issue because young people in cities like Oakland have been criminalized on marijuana crimes. And that's actually a big issue in our communities now. And actually the song that we had in the movie references that by Rex Life Raj. So those were all opportunities for us to really show how diverse this school was, and that Denilson, even though he's a leader, Jessica, even though she's a leader, they're advocating and speaking for a very diverse student population.
one of the things I think that is left with viewers of the film afterward is what's next, and that's how I want to kind of close this with Jessica. What's next for you? Where do you go from here?
That's a good question. I'm currently I'm still a senior. I'm graduating this year. I definitely have a lot of projects going on with Oakland Undivided, with Measure QQ, with different things. I'm currently a student board member. I'm passing that down to a different student board member who just got elected last week. And I'll be attending UC Berkeley in the fall, but on a full ride. So definitely, it's been an amazing journey. But yeah, I'm very hopeful for what's in store, and I'm currently working for different elected leaders and also people who are running to be able to get our youth also involved, because one of the things is that we pass Measure QQ, but we also want to do nationwide things to let also youth vote once they're 16 as well.
That's amazing, and congratulations on college. That's incredible. Denilson, what's next for you?
Well, currently I'm attending Long Beach State University. I had my last final as a freshman today, so I'm officially a college student. I hope to transfer to USC by sophomore year, and continue the work. I plan to continue my activism by maintaining civically engaged and supporting organizations and student unions around my community. This summer, I hope to work with ACLU, advocating for immigrant rights, because the fight never stops. While being in college, I also want to continue to represent my community of East and West Oakland to shed light on the potential that Oakland students carry. So yeah, I can't wait.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Denilson.
Hey, I just want to thank you all on behalf of the festival for being here. Michael, thank you for moderating. Pete and Sean, thank you for sharing your movie. And Jessica and Denilson, thank you for sharing your story with us. We truly appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time to talk to our audience. Thanks to everyone who's watching this, and take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody. Bye.